Okay, so if you're living with a partner, there's this misconception that there's something called common law relationship, common law wife, or common law husband, which creates legal rights for people who are in those particular relationships. Unfortunately, there's nothing like common law relationship. Now, just bear in mind that when you go into a relationship, if you're not married and you don't have any legal rights, if there are issues, stresses on the way which affects the relationship and unfortunately leads to a breakup, whatever contribution you've made in the relationship will not be recognized, unless, of course, you have ample evidence with intention that the contribution you made was to be part of the assets of the family. And that is why we've always advised that if you go into a relationship and it's not a marital relationship, it is always better to have a cohabitation agreement. Now, there's a difference between cohabitation agreement and prenuptial agreement. Prenuptial, as the name suggests, is a premarital agreement. So it's an agreement before you go into marriage. It usually is to protect people's pre-acquired assets before marriage. However, the cohabitation agreement is just like your marriage contract, okay? So we know that under the Matrimonial Causes Act, particularly Section 25, if you are married to someone and unfortunately the marriage breaks down, each party will have a right under Section 25. That is not so with people who are not in a marital relationship. The agreement is recognized in England, but it will only be recognized if you obtain independent legal advice. So the woman will have to obtain independent legal advice, the man will also have to obtain independent legal advice, and then the contract or the agreement will be accepted by the court. What sort of agreements can you have? You can have agreements on all things. For example, you can have agreements on assets, on childcare, on contribution towards utilities, loan payment, holiday payment, and in the unfortunate incident of injury or incapacitation, what shall happen to your assets, or because you're not dead, so your will not come in. Also, just be mindful that people who are married, if the other spouse is deceased and they die intestate, which means that they died without writing up a will, the surviving spouse will inherit the husband. There's no two ways about that, or the wife. However, in non-marital relationship, if you die intestate without writing a will, the other partner will not inherit you. Your inheritance will go to your children, and if you don't have children, it will go to your parents, and if you don't have parents, it will go to your full siblings, and if you don't have full siblings, it will go to your half siblings. So the consequences of living in a relationship without having a drawn-up cohabitation agreement is very dire. And I know that we normally enter into relationships with joy and happiness and love and desire, and therefore that affects our decisions. Most of our decisions that we make at the initial stages is affected by the love and our feelings for each other. The last thing that you want to talk about is money, because you don't want to be seen to be greedy. But I think it's prudent that if you're entering into a relationship where it's not a marital relationship and where you will not have any rights, it is important that you reduce your desires and your simple, everyday, daily life arrangement on a piece of paper. But as I said, you need independent legal advice for each other. To be frank with you, if that is not done and there is separation, the case is likely to go to court, either under Section 14 of the Trust of Land and Appointment of Administrators Appointment of Trustees Act 1996, which is a very, very expensive process. Or if there are children involved, of course, you can bring an action under the Children Act. But again, why must you go to court to enforce your rights? Clearly, you can reduce your rights on a document within which you have set out clearly what each person brought into the relationship and what you would take out if the relationship were to falter.